Good afternoon, dear ones. It's Wednesday, and we're taking an opportunity to spend a little time together in thought and in words. And I'm going to share some words with you, and giving us a chance to connect a bit and to be in communion with one another, and to find ways to generate hope and maintain hope in daunting times. You know, what's really happening right now is that for us who claim to be people of faith, the rubber is meeting the road. Push is coming to shove, and all those other sayings. It's easy to be filled with hope and calm serenity in God's presence when things are going along fine and according to the schedules we've managed to construct for ourselves. But when the rug gets pulled out from under us, it's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? How are you supposed to find hope in times like this? How are we supposed to find serenity? How are we supposed to be assured of God's presence among us when all of that is shaken? And there's no quick answer. There's no easy answer. This is when we say during worship that we gather not for answers but for wisdom. We're really talking about the fact that we're called to inhabit a mystery. Just as God is unknowable and indefinable, this is really not a matter of, when this happens, do this, and everything will be fine. There are situations where duress and crisis emerge, and there are things that we can do, but there's no assurance that it's going to be fine. I think it's always important to remember the old saying that as Christians, people of belief, we're called to be in the world but not of it. There's this dynamic throughout Christian scriptures of the difference between flesh, the Greek word sarx, which doesn't just mean flesh like my skin, but it means my humanity, the fact that I'm a biological human creature, and spirit. And they are two different things, and they are constantly in conflict. And the main reason for that is, as flesh, as biological creatures driven by need and desire, we are prone to push back against God's priorities, which are not about need and desire. Last Sunday in the sermon, I talked about the great Psalm 23. I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. There's this releasing and surrendering to God, and that's something that we're not wired to do. We're wired to take care of ourselves and to be doing everything we can to survive, and to, even if it means at the expense of others. And we're seeing that now with this virus, with people hoarding groceries and food and toilet paper and other necessities, out of a pure fear-driven need to be in control of something. So, despite what the world wants us to believe, which is that we're in control of our own destiny and we get to make our own road, and we're the masters of our existence, there's a lot of nonsense. And anyone who's been on the planet long enough knows this is true. If they're paying attention, if they're awake, and if their hearts have been opened to the wisdom of God. We control very little. I remember a cartoon in the New Yorker years ago of a man, a very vigorous, energetic, muscular man walking down the street, and he's saying to himself, well, I've gone to the gym every day, and I've let sugar and fat out of my diet, and I'm only eating healthy, and I'm getting enough. And he's saying all these things, and meanwhile there's a piano that has come untethered from a hoist, and it's falling on him. We get to control nothing except our attitude and our approach to our day as best we can. So how do we nurture hope? How do we find a way to have the courage to trust that we can have hope? Our Native American brothers and sisters have a great mythology, a great teaching about that there's two wolves inside of us. And one wolf is desperate and dangerous and given into fear and impulse and desire, and the other one is calm and serene and thinks before he acts, and is nurturing and is protective, and we get to decide which wolf we feed. So I want to share some words by a great Buddhist teacher named Joanna Macy. She's a systems analyst, and she's a author and a teacher and an environmentalist. And she says that when we have to deal with an acute crisis or an ongoing crisis, this is her quote: "The human spirit does not want to avoid. When we turn away from reality, our energy contracts and wanes, and we begin to feel dull and tired." Anybody relate? She says, "We have been given eyes, ears, and intelligence. As humans, we are called to meet courageously what is obstructing our path. That gives us energy." Okay, I'm going to stop for a minute. This is the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. There's a profound need to deal with what's in front of us, not to avoid it or step away from it. She says, when we meet the challenges in front of us, whether it's illness or climate crisis or danger to our democracy or to vulnerable fellow humans, then we become discerning and eloquent and courageous and able to hold our heads up. Courage gives us the energy to see when things are not right, and then we can feel healthy anger and our passion for justice and democracy, and this awakens our compassion. End quote. We need to deal with the reality of our lives. You know, courage is not avoiding danger or throwing oneself into danger. Courage is engaging in the danger despite the fact that it could have a negative outcome. In French, the word courage means large-heartedness. So the question of hope is, how do we keep our hearts open and open wide in times like these? Times when everyone, including ourselves, everyone is scared. Everyone doesn't know what tomorrow's going to be like. So I'm going to encourage you to encourage myself as well. Ask how we can find our ways to compassion and connection. And the ways to do it are through spiritual practice and compassionate actions for others and the world. So now I'm going to actually give you some things that you can do. Okay? In the following weeks, I'm going to be walking you through a 5-step process of establishing a spiritual practice. I'm going to be doing it in a very brief form, but over the next 5 weeks, these Wednesday sessions, we're going to go through what I call the 5 doors of awakening the sacred within us. But for now, I'm going to give you some suggestions. So get a pencil or a pen and write these down. Here's some ideas on what we can do during these times of isolation and fear. The first one is to pray. There are different types of prayer. There are prayers of petition, where we ask for things. There's prayers of honor, where we pray to honor God. You are great. You have created all that is. You know, those are prayers of awe. And then there are prayers of gratitude. I would say spend intentional, scheduled time in prayer, at least in the morning and at night. I would say choose a great teacher to study. You can do this online, or you might have books in your house that you've neglected or haven't read in decades. Find a great teacher, a great author, a great scholar, and dig into their work. Someone maybe you've always been interested in but never quite studied. I've been looking into Sigmund Freud, who was never my favorite, but I was encouraged by a friend whose mother, a friend I've known since I was in 4th grade, whose mother was a pediatric psychiatrist and a Freudian, and who imbued him with great understanding of Freud. And he's always talked about Freud was an anthropologist, and Freud knew all these languages, and Freud knew how to ask the question. And so I'm digging into this, and as a Jungian, it's a little bit of a leap. I would also say read wisdom literature. Of course, you know, whether it's the great philosophers or great spiritual texts, our own Bible, or, you know, the Christian scriptures, the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures, the Dhammapada, the Buddhist scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita. the Hindu scriptures, the Quran, the Muslim scriptures. Just read great wisdom literature and spend time with it. I would say especially with our Gospels. Spend some time in there. And then once again, I'd say pray. Pray some more. There's never too much prayer that can be had, right, or can be made. Sing. Sing with your family. Pick a song, a silly song or a favorite song. If you live alone, sing to yourself. When you're looking out the window or when you're making your bed or when you're in the shower, sing. We've been given hearts that seek joy, and there is joy to be found. And singing is one. Even if you're a terrible singer, open your hearts and open your mouths and open your voice. Connect to nature. If you can go out and go for a walk, do so. Try to do that every day. And if you can't, stand by a window and check out the way the cardinals are battling for dominance right now, or the way the little squirrels are gamboling and playing and wrestling around, and the way the trees and bushes and shrubs are starting to blossom. Pay attention. Pay attention to nature. Commit to doing something for someone else. If it's checking in on someone, if it's donating a bit of money to a cause, or, this is a good time to do that. Because when we do something for others, we're transcending our egos, and we're putting our neurosis aside for a moment and our worries, and we're showing up the way God wants us to show up. Make sure you're hydrating. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Get some exercise if you can. Look for something funny. Watch a sitcom on TV or a funny movie. Or call each other up and tell jokes. Who's got a new joke? I'm always up for a new joke. And I'll tell you one at the end of this session. This is a long session today, but what are you going to do? And I'd say get an inexpensive pad and keep it by your bed. And every morning when you wake up, write down 5 things you're grateful for. And every night when you go to sleep, write down 5 things you're grateful for. Even if they're the same things for a week or so. But think of things like your family of origin, or your friends, or your children, or the roof over your head, or your community of faith. Find something to express gratitude for. The great mystic Christian theologian Meister Eckhart in the Middle Ages said, if the only prayer you say is thank you, that's sufficient. So I'm going to tell you a joke, and then I'm going to read from Psalms, and then we'll talk later. The joke is, a duck walks into a bar, and he hops up on the bar stool. And the bartender says, what do you want? And the duck says, you got any grapes? The bartender says, no. We have beer, we have wine, we have liquor. This is a bar. I don't know. And the duck says, okay, and he hops down and he waddles out. A couple hours later, he waddles back into the bar, hops up on the bar stool. And the bartender says, yes. He goes, you got any grapes? He goes, no, I told you, this is a bar. I don't have anything like that. You want a drink? I can give you a drink. I don't have... Okay, and he hops down and walks out again. Next day, duck waddles into the bar, hops up on the bar stool, and the bartender's like, what do you want? You got any grapes? He goes, look, I told you I don't have any grapes, okay? I have what I have. I don't have that. Stop coming in here and bothering me. He goes, okay. So he hops down and waddles out, and a couple hours later he waddles back in and hops up, and the bartender looks at him, and the duck says, you got any grapes? And the bartender loses his temper and says, look, if you come in here one more time, I'm going to take a hammer and nails, and I'm going to nail your webbed ducky feet to the floor. Do you hear me? You come in here one more time, I'm going to nail your feet to the floor. And the duck goes, okay, and he hops down and waddles out. Later on, the bartender's washing glasses, and he turns around and he notices the duck is back. And he says, what do you want? And the duck says, you got any nails? He goes, no. He says, okay, you got any grapes? That's your joke for the day. I didn't say it was a good joke. Anyway, my brothers and sisters, I want to leave you with a little reading from Psalm 91. The Psalms are a great source of comfort, especially the Psalms of confidence. Psalm 91 is one of my favorites. I'm going to read a part of it. You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For God will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. God will cover you with his pinions, and under her wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, or the arrow that flies by day, or the pestilence that stalks in darkness, or the destruction that wastes at noonday. We are under the protection of God's unconditional and unlimited love. We can't be saved from the grievances and troubles of life, but we're never alone. God is always with us, and God is always carrying us. May you find comfort in that. And call one another. Say hello. May God be with each of you, and may you find blessings in this day. Take good care.